So that's the idea, that you're trying to figure out some way of differentiating between all of the customers out there. And you probably heard of age and gender. Those are easy because you can figure that out more easily from a database, but those might not be the best ways. So as we think about that, I just wanted to show you some infographics that I've seen that I think are pretty good. This one's from Stat Social. They compare the customers between Uber and Lyft, their interests, what celebrities they like, their brands they like, the TV shows they like. So they did this out of surveys of existing customers. But I'm showing this to you for a couple of reasons. First, these are some of the things that you might think about as ways of identifying certain types of customers. And then the second is, when you write a business plan, you need to show this in a graphical way. So these types of infographics showing things almost like a brochure or a magazine, that's much more effective than just having text, black text on white background. So this looks much better. Here's a list kind of options. You could base it on demographics, as I mentioned before. You could base it on geographic location. We'll talk a little bit about if there's anything that's local, where let's say a restaurant, obviously you're going to have more people coming that are local. So it's a very local-based competition. So location matters. Zip code you could use. Psychographic information, I showed you some of that before. Buying sensitivity. So and that's sometimes linked with demographics. But anyway, these are some of the options where you're trying to figure out who exactly is most interested in the type of product or service that I have. A couple of things that you need to think about are nature of buying, whether it's the intermediate user or end user or both. So if you're selling a product that teenagers would use, maybe their parents are the purchasers. So they influence the decision. You need to think about seasonality. So when do people buy? And durability. So this is something that if you can have a product that people buy periodically rather than just once, obviously you can make more money. So how often do they purchase? Obviously, there's some other influences about whether people will buy your product or service. If there's regulations or norms for buying certain things. So, for example, if you're trying to sell something that's environmental, you would think, oh, well, California is a better place. One, because there's more people that want to buy things that are good for the environment, but there's also more regulations that that make it easier for environmental goods and services to compete. So that's something you can think about. Also, temporal trends. Are there more and more customers? You can think about long and short run. So once you kind of figure out how many people are there out there in general, then you want to focus on, again, these graphics are from Steve Blank. You want to focus on who you're going to sell to in the first, second, or third year. So you're focusing on, like, not just who you could be your customer, but who will be, and try to quantify that. How many people can you get to in that first year or second year or third year? So before we were kind of thinking about just how many people are out there. Now we're thinking, and that's kind of a top-down approach, so we can use databases for that. Now you're thinking about, from the bottom up, how many people can you go out and talk to and reach? How would you actually lay that out? So target market is where you're going to start first. You have to start somewhere, and you should start where you're going to be most successful. And that's an important part. One analogy that I make is that these when you're writing a business plan, you're trying to paint a picture of a path to some very attractive location in the future, some place where you're very profitable, and you're going to show this is the path that I'm going to take to get there. And the target market is explaining these are the first steps that I'm going to take. These are the first customers that I'm going to get, and those first steps are the most important. So one thing I want you to think about is how would you write that? How would you write a simplified target market and market analysis section for this idea? So I want you to practice that. I'll give you time to practice that on your own. And we'll talk about it in class. Please ask me if you have any questions. But again, what you're trying to say, you're trying to indicate that you really understand your customers and that there are a certain number of them out there and that they will buy your product because of the needs that they have and what you're providing. How can you do that? Well, how do you really show that you know your target market? Well, you can do a lot of different things. Obviously, if you can get prior sales that you've already sold some of your product or service, that's the best indication that people actually want it. The second best is if someone commits to buy. And I'd like you to watch a video from Shark Tank again. You should be able to link to this. This is the video. You can just Google this. You don't sound like the bozo I thought you were. I'd like you to watch that video. It's just 1 minute. And it shows a guy who, if you can't tell from the video, he's wearing something that covers his nose, that filters his nose for breathing. And this is a great video that shows how important it is to convince someone that there is really a market out there if you already have people that are willing and have signed up to buy. So that's a really good video to watch. You should watch that. I'll pause a little bit and let you go watch that and then come back to the slides. So that video was really helpful because it shows that, you know, even people that are very skeptical of an idea can be won over if you can show, oh, okay, that there's people that are they've committed to buy, I already have a contract. Similarly, if you have suppliers and or distributors that are committed to you, that's a way of indicating that there really is a need there because those suppliers and partners have some confidence in you. If you have expertise and you have experience in an industry, that goes a long way to convincing people that you really understand customers. And then also, as we talked about in the last presentation slides, getting feedback from potential customers, actually going out and talking to people, trying what they're using right now, really knowing that, spending the time on that's an important part of primary data. Okay, so we've already, I think we've talked about most of this. You do want to know how big it is, so how many people are purchasing, how many dollars is that, how often do they purchase. You want to be able to say, and we think we can get this portion of the market. Obviously, you can't get everything. You can't just arbitrarily say, if we can just get 1% of this market. You'll have to explain like how you're going to do that. And it's helpful to know if the market is changing. So if it's growing rapidly, that's a lot more attractive. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to get some numbers with the librarian. So that's it. Thanks a lot.